17-year-old Kiana Jackson stands trembling outside Pineview Academy's principal's office in Georgia, her uniform caked with mud from a brutal cafeteria attack by bullies hurling racial slurs. She grips a cracked phone, debating a call, to her estranged father Marcus Tate, a whispered legend among Green Berets. The principal smirks, dismissing her complaint as provocation. Dialing Marcus, she ignites a firestorm that will topple Pineview's corrupt elite, reshaping her destiny. What chaos will this unleash? Before we dive in, let me know where you're watching from, and if you stand for justice, hit like and subscribe because tomorrow's explosive episode is unmissable. Kiana Jackson woke up the morning after the cafeteria attack with a knot in her stomach, her mud-stained uniform still crumpled in the laundry basket of their tiny Georgia apartment. She stared at the cracked mirror above her dresser, tracing the faint bruise on her cheek where Nathan Carver had shoved her into a table while his crew laughed and shouted slurs that cut deeper than any fist. Pineview Academy loomed ahead, a sprawling fortress of red brick and privilege nestled in the rolling hills outside Savannah, its manicured lawns a stark contrast to the cracked sidewalks of her neighborhood. As one of only 5 black students, among 500, she'd earned her spot through a scholarship, a ticket to a better future her mother Elise had fought tooth and nail to secure. But today, that ticket felt like a curse. She pulled on a fresh blazer, the Pineview crest gleaming on her chest, and squared her shoulders. She wouldn't let them see her break. Not yet. The bus ride to school was a blur of whispering classmates, their eyes darting to her then away, some with pity, others with smirks. She clutched her backpack tighter, the weight of her books a shield against the stairs. Her first class was history, a subject she loved for its raw honesty about the past, though today it would become a battlefield. Mr. Grayson, a wiry man with thinning hair and a permanent frown, droned on about the Civil War, his chalk scratching the board as he listed dates and generals. Kiana sat near the front, her notebook open, pen poised, determined to focus, despite the prickling sensation of eyes boring into her back. Nathan Carver lounged 3 rows behind, his golden hair catching the sunlight streaming through the tall windows, his tailored uniform somehow sharper than everyone else's. He was the king of Pineview, son of Richard Carver, the real estate tycoon who owned half the town and funded the school's new wing. His crew, Jace, Tyler, and Miles, flanked him like loyal hounds, their smirks a silent promise of trouble. Halfway through the lesson, as Mr. Grayson turned to write another date, a folded note sailed over Kiana's shoulder and landed on her. "Desk?" She ignored it, her jaw tightening, but Nathan's low chuckle echoed through the room. She couldn't resist. Unfolding it, she saw the scrawled words in thick black marker. "Go back to the gutter, charity case." Her pulse spiked, heat flooding her face, but she kept her expression blank, refusing to give him the satisfaction. Then came the second blow. A wad of tape hit her back, sticking a larger paper to her blazer. Laughter rippled through the class as she reached behind her, peeling it off. This one read, "Pineview's trash," with a crude drawing of a stick figure in rags. She stood abruptly, chair scraping the floor, and held it up, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Who wrote this?" she demanded, staring straight at Nathan. His cold blue eyes met hers, glinting with amusement, but he shrugged, leaning back with a lazy grin. "No idea, scholarship girl. Maybe you should check the lost and found." His crew snickered, and Mr. Grayson turned, frowning at the disruption but saying nothing about the note. Instead, he pointed at Kiana. "Sit down, Miss Jackson. You're holding up the lesson." Her protest died in her throat as she sank back into her seat, the humiliation burning hotter than the Georgia sun outside. When the bell rang, she bolted for the door, mentally mapping her route to calculus, but Nathan wasn't done. He waited until the hallway cleared, then, accidentally, bumped her shoulder, sending her books crashing to the tile floor. The scattered pages of her history notes fluttered like wounded birds, and she knelt to gather them, her fingers shaking. "Oops," Nathan said, towering over her, his voice dripping with mock regret. "Guess affirmative action doesn't teach coordination." Jace, a hulking linebacker with a buzz cut, barked a laugh, while Tyler and Miles joined in, their voices a chorus of cruelty. Mr. Grayson shuffled past, eyes fixed on his clipboard, pretending not to see. Kiana stood, meeting Nathan's gaze without a word, her silence a steel wall he couldn't crack. That defiance seemed to spark something darker in him, his grin faltering into a scowl, before he stalked off with his pack trailing behind. Lunch was supposed to be a break, but the cafeteria became a gauntlet. She sat alone at a corner table, picking at a sandwich when Nathan strode in, his presence parting the crowd like a king entering his court. He didn't approach her, not yet, but his stare was a promise of worse to come. She made it through the day, her resolve fraying but intact until the final bell sent her to the bike racks behind the school. Her beat-up Schwinn was her lifeline, a gift from Elise after months of overtime at the textile factory. She froze when she saw it. The tires were slashed, jagged cuts spilling air onto the pavement, and her lock hung uselessly from the frame. Nathan leaned against a nearby oak, phone in hand, filming her reaction as his crew circled like vultures. "What's wrong, Kiana?" he called, voice loud enough for the gathering students to hear. "Can't afford a new one, should have stayed at your ghetto school." The crowd tittered, some filming too, and her chest tightened as the video spread across Pineview's social media in real time. She wanted to scream, to fight, but she turned away, walking home 3 miles under a blistering sun, her sneakers pounding the asphalt with every step. That evening their apartment smelled of Elise's cooking, collard greens simmering on the stove, a rare comfort after a double shift. Kiana slumped at the kitchen table, her backpack thudding to the floor, and recounted the day in halting bursts. Elise's tired eyes hardened, her hands pausing over the pot. "This stops now," she said, voice low but fierce. She grabbed her phone, dialing Pineview's office despite the late hour, demanding a meeting with the principal. The secretary brushed her off, claiming it was outside protocol, but Elise persisted until she secured a slot for the next morning. Sleep came fitfully for Kiana, her dreams a jumble of Nathan's sneer and the principal's dismissive smirk. At 7 sharp, Elise stood in their cramped living room, smoothing her best blouse, the one she wore to fight the factory for fair wages. They drove to Pineview in silence, the old Honda rattling over potholes, and faced Principal Hargrove in his oak-paneled office. He was a stout man with a comb-over and a tie too tight, his desk littered with golf trophies. Elise laid out the attack, the note, the tires, her voice steady as she slid Kiana's cracked phone across the desk, showing the video Nathan posted. Hargrove barely glanced at it, his lips curling into a thin smile. "Mrs. Jackson, these are serious claims, but boys will be boys. Kiana's new here, maybe she provoked them." Kiana's fists clenched under the table, but Elise leaned forward, unflinching. "She's a straight-A student being targeted for her skin color. You're supposed to protect her." Hargrove sighed, adjusting his tie. "Without witnesses, willing to testify, my hands are tied. I'll speak to Nathan, but I suggest Kiana learns to fit in." The meeting ended with a handshake that felt like a slap, and they left with nothing but a warning to avoid trouble. Back home, Elise's phone buzzed as she changed into her factory scrubs. It was her supervisor, his tone clipped. "Heard you're stirring things up at Pineview. Carver's a big client. Keep it up, and we might not need you on the line." The threat hung heavy, a noose tightening around their fragile stability, and Kiana saw the fear flicker in her mother's eyes for the first time. That night, alone in her room, posters of MIT and Stanford staring down from the walls, Kiana pulled out her phone. The video had racked up hundreds of likes, comments piling on with venom. Scholarship trash. She doesn't belong. Her finger hovered over the record button. If no one would listen, she'd make them hear. She hit start, whispering into the dark. "This is day 1. I'm not running." The first domino had fallen, and Nathan's reign was about to face its first real test. Kiana Jackson woke to the buzz of her phone, the cracked screen glowing with notifications from the secret recording she'd made last night. Her heart thudded as she scrolled through them, her whispered vow to fight back still echoing in her ears. She'd barely slept, the weight of Nathan Carver's latest attack pressing down like a storm cloud over their cramped Savannah apartment. Her slashed bike tires, the racial slurs, the principal's smug dismissal, all of it fueled a fire she couldn't douse. Today was her first day back at Pineview Academy after the cafeteria incident, and she'd face it suspended or not. Her mother, Elise, was already gone, pulling an early shift at the factory despite the supervisor's threat, leaving a note on the kitchen table. "Stay strong, baby. We'll figure this out." Kiana slipped the note into her pocket, grabbed her backpack and walked the 3 miles to school, her sneakers scuffing the pavement, each step a silent rebellion. Pineview's red brick facade loomed ahead, its ivy-covered walls a facade of prestige hiding rot within. She wasn't supposed to be here, not with the suspension looming, but she'd come to meet someone who might listen. In the crowded hallway, she spotted Jamal Carter, a lanky junior with a faded hoodie and a quiet intensity, one of the other 4 black students at Pineview. He'd caught her eye yesterday, his gaze lingering with something like recognition after Nathan's crew filmed. Her humiliation. Now he leaned against a locker, earbuds dangling, watching the chaos of passing students with a detached air. She approached, her voice low. "You saw what happened, didn't you?" Jamal pulled out an earbud, his dark eyes narrowing as he studied her. "Yeah, Nathan's got this place locked down. His dad's got the school board, the cops, even the janitors scared to cross him." Kiana nodded, her jaw tight. "I'm done taking it. You in?" He hesitated, then gave a slow nod. "Been waiting for someone to push back. What's the plan?" They slipped into an empty stairwell, the echo of slamming lockers fading as Kiana outlined her idea. She'd recorded Nathan's taunts, the tire slashing, all of it, and she wanted to get it to Ms. Harper, the English teacher who'd once praised her essay on Langston Hughes with a rare smile. Jamal agreed she was their best shot, a young teacher still green enough to care. "She's got office hours now," he said, checking his watch. "Let's move." They navigated the halls, dodging Nathan's crew, who strutted past with their usual swagger, oblivious to the storm brewing. Ms. Harper's classroom smelled of old books and coffee, her desk cluttered with papers and a wilting plant. She looked up from grading, her glasses slipping down her nose, surprise flashing across her face as Kiana and Jamal entered. "Miss Jackson, you're not supposed to be here," she said, but her tone was soft, not accusing. Kiana didn't waste time. "I need you to hear this." She played the recording, Nathan's voice sneering through the tinny speaker, every slur and threat laid bare. Jamal stood silent, arms crossed, watching Ms. Harper's expression shift from curiosity to horror. When it ended, she leaned back, exhaling sharply. "This is disgusting. I'll take it to Hargrove myself. He can't ignore this." Kiana's chest loosened, a flicker of hope sparking. Maybe this was the turning point. Ms. Harper promised to email the file to the principal and the school counselor by noon, urging Kiana to lay low until they responded. "You're brave," she added, her voice firm. "Don't let them break you." Kiana nodded, a rare smile tugging at her lips as she and Jamal slipped out, blending into the lunch crowd. For a few hours, she dared to believe they'd won a small victory. She hid in the library, her suspension technically in effect, flipping through a chemistry textbook to keep her mind busy. Jamal texted her updates. "Harper sent it. Hargrove's pissed." Her pulse raced, imagining Nathan squirming under real scrutiny for once. But hope was a fragile thing at Pineview, and it shattered faster than she'd expected. By 2 o'clock, the library's quiet hum was interrupted by her phone buzzing with a new video. She opened it, and her stomach dropped. It was a hacked feed from the school's security cameras, showing her and Jamal sneaking into Ms. Harper's room, overlaid with text, "Liar caught red-handed." The comments flooded in, vicious and swift. "Scholarship cheat, faking it for attention." She refreshed her email, finding a forwarded message from Nathan's account, one he shouldn't have had access to. It was her recording submission to Ms. Harper, but twisted with fake additions, her voice crudely dubbed to sound like she'd staged the whole thing. "I'll show them who belongs here," the altered Kiana sneered, a line she'd never said. Her real evidence was gone, erased from the school's server, replaced with this lie. Jamal burst into the library minutes later, his face ashen. "They got into the system. Harper's in trouble now." Kiana's hands shook as she followed him to the main office, where Miss Harper stood outside Hargrove's door, her shoulders slumped. The principal emerged, his comb-over askew, voice booming for the gathering students to hear. "Miss Harper, you've overstepped. Encouraging false accusations is unacceptable." He turned to Kiana, eyes cold. "And you, Miss Jackson, your suspension starts now. 1 week, next time it's expulsion." Miss Harper tried to protest, her voice rising. "That recording was real. I heard it myself." But Hargrove cut her off, waving a hand. "We've reviewed the evidence. It's clearly manipulated. You're on probation, Harper. Don't push it." Kiana's hope evaporated, replaced by a sickening realization. Nathan's crew hadn't just deleted her proof, they'd turned it against her, framing her as the villain. Students whispered as she grabbed her bag, Jamal trailing her to the exit. "How'd they do it?" she muttered, her voice raw. "Tyler's a tech freak," Jamal said, kicking a pebble across the parking lot. "His mom's the IT admin. They own this place." The walk home was a blur, her sneakers dragging through dust, the weight of defeat heavier than her backpack. She'd thought Miss Harper could break through Pineview's wall of privilege, but Nathan's reach was deeper, his power a web strangling every move she made. At the apartment, Elise wasn't back yet, the silence amplifying Kiana's racing thoughts. She sank onto the couch, replaying the day, the sting of betrayal sharper than Nathan's taunts. Her phone buzzed again, a text from an unknown number. "Keep lying, trash, you're done." She knew it was Nathan, gloating from his untouchable throne. The school's email followed, confirming her suspension and warning of further disciplinary action if she disrupted Pineview again. She stared at the cracked screen, her reflection fractured in the glass, and felt the walls closing. And they'd taken her voice, her ally, her chance to fight fair. But fair wasn't an option anymore. She opened her recording app again, the red button glowing like a beacon. If they wanted a liar, she'd give them truth they couldn't erase. She hit record, her voice steady despite the rage boiling inside. Day 2. They think they've won. They're wrong. The suspension was their move, but it wouldn't be the last. Nathan's smug face flashed in her mind, his crew's laughter ringing in her ears, and she knew this was only the beginning of a war she couldn't lose. Kiana Jackson's suspension stretched into its second day, the silence of their Savannah apartment, a stark contrast to the chaos of Pineview Academy. She sat cross-legged on the sagging couch, her cracked phone balanced on her knee, replaying the recording she'd made after Nathan Carver's latest victory. His crew had hacked her evidence, turned her ally Ms. Harper against a wall of bureaucracy, and left her branded a liar. The sting of that betrayal fueled her now, a slow burn that refused to fade. Her mother, Elise, was at the factory, her double shifts a desperate bid to keep them afloat after the supervisor's threat tied to Nathan's father, Richard Carver. Kiana's room felt too small, its MIT and Stanford posters mocking her stalled. Dreams? So she grabbed her ancient laptop, a hand-me-down from a cousin, and started digging. What secrets did Pineview hide behind its ivy walls? Could the past reveal a way to fight back? She typed Pineview Academy scandals into the search bar, her fingers trembling with purpose. Hours blurred as she scrolled through old news, articles, alumni forums, and buried social media threads. A pattern emerged like a ghost rising from the dirt. Over 2 decades, 11 minority students, mostly black or Latino, had left Pineview under mysterious circumstances. A valedictorian expelled for cheating after acing tests. A track star dropped after vandalism he swore he didn't commit. Each case reeked of harassment, each family silenced or driven out. How many had faced Nathan's brand of cruelty before her? She found a name, Latasha Brooks, a scholarship student from 10 years back who'd vanished mid-semester after reporting bullying. A grainy blog post from an anonymous friend claimed Latasha's locker had been trashed with slurs, her complaints ignored until she chose to leave. Kiana's pulse quickened. This wasn't just her fight, it was a legacy of injustice. She opened a blank page on her laptop, hesitating only a moment before typing, "I'm Kiana Jackson, suspended from Pineview Academy for telling the truth. They attacked me, slashed my tires, called me trash because I'm black and poor. I'm not the first. Who else has a story?" She uploaded it to a free blog site, set it to anonymous, and shared the link on obscure Pineview-related forums she'd unearthed. Her hands shook as she hit post, the digital echo of her voice rippling into the void. Would anyone hear her? By evening, responses trickled in, each one a shard of broken history. "They ran my brother out in '09, one wrote. "Racial notes in my locker, 2015, said another. A former teacher chimed in. "I saw it happen. Couldn't stop it. They fired me for trying." Kiana's breath caught as the blog's views climbed past 50, then 100, a chorus of whispers growing into a shout. She wasn't alone. Elise came home at 9, her factory scrubs wrinkled, eyes sunken from exhaustion. Kiana showed her the blog, the screen glowing in their dim kitchen. "Look, Mom, it's not just me." Elise's tired face softened, pride flickering through, the worry. "You're fighting smart, baby, but be careful. Carver's got long arms." Kiana nodded, the weight of those words sinking in. She posted again before bed, detailing the cafeteria attack, the hacked evidence, the suspension, every word raw and unfiltered. Sleep came in fits, her dreams a tangle of Nathan's sneer and the faces of kids she'd never met, all staring back from Pineview's shadowed halls. The next morning, her phone buzzed with a notification. The blog had hit 500 views overnight, comments piling up from strangers and ghosts of Pineview's past. "They trashed my car too," one said. "Hargrove laughed when I reported it," wrote another. Kiana's chest swelled, a fragile hope taking root. Could this be the weapon to crack Nathan's armor? She spent the day replying, gathering stories, her laptop humming as she built a timeline of Pineview's sins. By dusk, the blog was trending locally, shared by activist groups on Twitter, its anonymous author a mystery sparking whispers. But victory was a mirage at Pineview, and Nathan's retaliation struck like lightning. At 10 that night, Kiana jolted awake to a crash outside their apartment. She stumbled to the window, peering through the blinds, and froze. 3 figures in hoodies stood in the parking lot, one swinging a bat that shattered their Hondas. Windshield, glass exploding across the asphalt. Another shook a spray can, red paint hissing as he scrawled "Leave nigger" across the driver's door. The third held a phone, filming it all, the flash a cruel spotlight. Her heart slammed against her ribs as she recognized Nathan's lanky frame under the hoodie, his golden hair catching the streetlight. They'd doxed her address, turned her blog into a beacon for their hate. She grabbed her phone, recording through the window, her breath fogging the glass. The trio vanished into the night, tires squealing as they peeled out, leaving the wreckage behind. Elise burst in, still in her nightgown, her voice shaking. "What the hell was that?" Kiana showed her the video, the slur glaring back in crimson. "Nathan," she whispered, rage choking her words. Elise dialed 911, her hands trembling, but the police response was a gut punch. 2 officers arrived an hour later, their flashlights sweeping the lot with lazy arcs. Officer Daniels, a beefy man with a buzz cut, scribbled in his notepad, barely looking at the car. "Kids pulling pranks," he said, his drawl thick with disinterest. "No witnesses, no plates. Can't do much." Kiana thrust her phone at him, the video playing Nathan's unmistakable silhouette. "This isn't a prank, it's a hate crime." Daniels watched, his lip curling slightly, then handed it back. "Hard to ID in the dark. Could be anyone. File a report if you want. But don't expect miracles." They left without taking prints, the report a formality Elise knew would gather dust. The next morning, Elise called in sick, her second job at a diner, their only lifeline now. "I'm getting a lawyer," she said, voice hard as steel. "This ends." She spent the day on the phone, begging legal aid offices, her savings already stretched thin from rent and bills. Kiana watched, guilt gnawing at her. Had her blog made them targets? By afternoon, a lawyer agreed to meet, but the fee was a month's wages, money they didn't have. Elise hung up, her face ashen. "We'll sell the car. What's left of it?" Kiana nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. The blog had given her a voice, but Nathan had turned it into a weapon against them, his cruelty escalating beyond school walls. She checked the site again, views now at 1,000, comments raging against Pineview's corruption. It was a spark, But the firebomb outside told her Nathan wouldn't let it burn unchecked. What would he do next to silence her? All right. If you think Kiana's blog is the key to exposing Nathan's crew, comment number 1 below. If you believe the police should have done more, hit that like button. And if you're ready to see this fight explode, subscribe now because tomorrow's episode will blow your mind. So what's Nathan planning now that Kiana's voice is growing louder? Could his next move be the one that breaks her, or will it ignite something even he can't control? Kiana Jackson sat on the edge of her bed, the faint hum of Savannah's morning traffic seeping through the apartment's thin walls. The spray-painted slur on their wrecked Honda still burned in her mind. Nathan Carver's late-night attack, a fresh wound that wouldn't heal. Her blog had hit over 1,000 views, its stories of Pineview Academy's buried injustices spreading like wildfire, but the cost was steep. Elise had sold the car for scraps, her second job barely covering the lawyer's retainer, and their savings dwindled to nothing. Kiana's suspension stretched into its 4th day, her dreams of MIT and Stanford fading under the weight of Nathan's relentless hate. She stared at her cracked phone, the blog's latest comments a mix of support and venom, and felt the walls closing in tighter. Was this fight worth losing everything? Her fingers hovered over her contacts, landing on a name she hadn't called in 10 years. Marcus Tate, her father, a man she barely remembered, his face a blur of stern eyes and a military buzz cut from a single photo tucked behind her desk. He'd vanished when she was 7, after a classified Green Beret mission, leaving Elise with clipped excuses and a military letter declaring him missing, presumed dead. Kiana had grown up believing he'd abandoned them, but whispers from her uncle hinted at something darker, a ghost too dangerous to claim. Now, with Nathan's crew escalating and the police turning a blind eye, she needed more than a blog. She needed a weapon. Her thumb pressed call, the ring echoing in her ear like a heartbeat. 3 tries, no answer. On the 4th, a gruff voice cut through, low and rough as gravel. "Who's this?" Kiana swallowed, her voice trembling but firm. "It's Kiana, your daughter. I need help." Silence stretched, heavy and thick before he spoke again. "Where are you?" She gave the address, her words tumbling out. "The attacks, the suspension, the vandalism. They're trying to break us and no one's stopping them." Another pause, then a single word. "Stay put." The line went dead, leaving her staring at the phone, a mix of relief and dread pooling in her gut. Had she just unleashed a storm she couldn't control? 2 days later, Marcus Tate arrived in Pineview, a shadow slipping into town under a grey dawn. 45, weathered by years off the grid, his salt and pepper beard masked the hard lines of a face that had seen too much. He carried a duffel bag, moving with a quiet precision honed in jungles and war zones, his eyes scanning every corner as he rented a cheap motel room 3 miles from Kiana's apartment. A Green Beret sniper with a kill count whispered in military legends. He'd gone dark after a mission went sideways. Enemies in high places forcing him into exile to protect his family. Now, his daughter's voice had pulled him back. He spent the first day watching, invisible among Pineview's oak-lined streets. From a park bench, he tracked Kiana's routine as she walked to the library, her suspension keeping her from school, but not from fighting. He noted Nathan's crew, their loud swagger at a gas station, Nathan's golden hair a beacon of arrogance. Jace, the linebacker, towered over the others, Tyler's tech-savvy fingers always on his phone, Miles a wiry tag-along with a cruel grin. Marcus memorized their patterns, their laughs, the way they owned every space they entered. Back at the Poi motel, he pulled a burner phone from his bag, texting Kiana. "Meet me. Park, noon." She arrived, her backpack slung over one shoulder, eyes darting until she spotted him under a sprawling tree. Up close, he was taller than she'd imagined, his frame lean but coiled, like a spring waiting to snap. "You're him," she said, voice catching. "You're real." Marcus nodded, his gaze steady. "You're in deep. Tell me everything." She did, her words spilling out. The cafeteria, the notes, the tires, the blog, the vandalism. He listened, his face a mask, but His eyes darkened with each detail. "They've got power," he said when she finished. "But power's only good if you keep it." Meanwhile, Nathan wasn't resting. At Pineview, he leaned against Kiana's locker during lunch, his crew gathered tight. "She's gone quiet," he smirked, flipping a pocket knife between his fingers. "Think she's scared?" Tyler grinned, tapping his phone. "Her blog's still up, gotta shut it down for good." Jace cracked his knuckles. "Let's give her something real to cry about." That afternoon, as Kiana met Marcus, Nathan slipped into the janitor's closet with a baggie of weed stolen from his dad's stash. He planted it in Kiana's locker, wedging it behind her chemistry book, then tipped off Vice Principal Ortiz with an anonymous note, "Check Jackson's stuff, she's trouble." Ortiz, a wiry man with a mustache and a grudge against scholarship kids, didn't hesitate. He called the police, and by 3 o'clock, 2 officers stormed the library, where Kiana studied, her suspension ignored in her desperation to keep up. "Kiana Jackson," Officer Daniels barked, the same cop who'd dismissed the vandalism. "Step outside." She froze, her textbook slipping as they yanked her backpack, spilling books onto the table. Daniels unzipped it, then turned to her locker, prying it open with a crowbar. The baggie tumbled out, green flecks dusting the floor, and the library went silent, students gaping. "That's not mine," Kiana said, voice rising. "I don't do drugs." Daniels smirked, bagging. "The evidence. Tell it to the judge, kid." They cuffed her, the cold metal biting her wrists, and marched her out, whispers trailing like smoke. At the station, they fingerprinted her, the ink staining her hands as Elise rushed in, still in her diner apron, face pale with fury. "This is a setup," she shouted, slamming Kiana's blog printouts on the desk. "They're framing her." The desk sergeant shrugged. "Evidence says otherwise. She's lucky it's just a warning this time." They released Kiana after an hour, but the damage was done. Back at the apartment, Marcus waited, his duffel bag open, a tactical knife glinting on the table. "They planted it," Kiana said, collapsing onto the couch, her wrists red. "Nathan's. Dad owns the cops." Marcus nodded, his voice low. "Saw it coming. They're scared of you." He left that night, blending into Pineview's shadows, and arrived at Principal Hargrove's office at dawn. The lock clicked under his skilled fingers, and he slipped inside, the golf trophies glinting in the dim light. Hargrove arrived at 7, coffee in hand, and froze as Marcus rose from his chair. "Who the hell are you?" Hargrove sputtered, reaching for the phone. Marcus placed Kiana's phone on the desk, the locker video playing, Nathan's silhouette, clear as he planted the drugs. "That's my daughter you're screwing over," Marcus said, his calm more chilling than any shout. "Call it off." Hargrove's comb-over quivered, but his smirk returned. "No proof that's Carver, and you're trespassing. Get out, or I'll have you arrested." Marcus leaned closer, his breath steady. "You don't know what I can do." He left, the threat hanging like smoke, but Hargrove didn't budge. By noon, he'd called an emergency meeting with Richard Carver, who donated the school's new gym. "She's trouble," Hargrove said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Her dad's some nutcase." Richard's eyes narrowed. "End it." That afternoon, Kiana's phone buzzed with an email from Pineview. "Expulsion effective immediately. Drug possession and disruptive behavior." Elise crumpled the message, tears streaking her face while Kiana stared at the wall, her future shattering. Marcus stood by the window, watching a black SUV cruise past, his jaw tight. "They think they've won," he muttered. "They're wrong." The expulsion was final, Nathan's crew untouchable, and Kiana's fight had just begun to bleed into something bigger. Kiana Jackson slumped against the peeling wall of their Savannah apartment, the expulsion email from Pineview Academy glowing on her cracked phone like a death sentence. Her mother, Elise, paced the tiny kitchen, her diner apron stained with grease, voice trembling as she muttered about lawyers they couldn't afford. Marcus Tate, Kiana's father, stood by the window, his silhouette a dark pillar against the morning light filtering through chipped blinds. He'd been back in her life for 3 days, a Green Beret sniper summoned from the shadows, his weathered face unreadable as he watched the street below. The drug planting, Nathan Carver's frame-up and Principal Hargrove's smug expulsion had crushed Kiana's dreams of MIT, but Marcus's presence was a spark in the ashes. "They think they've buried you," he said, his voice low and steady, turning to face her. "They don't know what's coming." Kiana nodded, her bruised wrists still aching from the cuffs, her resolve hardening. She'd lost Pineview, but she wouldn't lose the fight. That night, Marcus slipped out, his duffel bag slung over one shoulder, moving through Savannah's back streets like a phantom. He'd spent years off the grid, his sniper skills honed in missions too classified to name, and now he turned them on Nathan Carver. At 2 a.m, he crouched in the shadows of Pineview's student parking lot, Nathan's sleek Mustang gleaming under a street lamp. With a flick of his wrist, he attached a small device beneath the car's chassis, a remote jammer he'd rigged from parts scavenged in his motel room. A text to Nathan's phone followed, sent through an encrypted burner. "Back off, or you'll wish you had." He melted into the night, leaving no trace. By dawn, Nathan strutted into the lot, his crew trailing him, their laughter echoing off the brick walls. He climbed into the Mustang, key turning, but the engine sputtered and died. His smirk vanished as he tried again. The car silent, the jammer frying its electronics. Jace pounded the hood. Tyler scrolled his phone for a fix, and Miles kicked a tire, their frustration mounting. Nathan found the note tucked under the wiper, his blue eyes narrowing as he read it aloud. "Some loser's messing with me," snarled, crumpling the paper. "They're dead." He didn't know it was Marcus, but the seed of doubt took root. Across town, Richard Carver, Nathan's father, got the call in his sprawling office, a glass tower overlooking Savannah's skyline. Real estate kingpin and Pineview benefactor, he ruled with money and fear, his tailored suit a shield against accountability. "Fix it," he barked to his assistant, slamming the phone down, "and find out who's screwing with my son." He dialed a private security firm, ex-cops with loose morals, and by noon 2 burly men in black SUVs patrolled Pineview's grounds, their eyes scanning for threats. Richard wasn't done. He leaned on Police Chief Malone, a grizzled man who'd owed him favors since a shady land deal a decade back. "There's a nutcase targeting my kid," Richard said over coffee at a downtown diner, sliding an envelope of cash across the table. "Dig up dirt, make it stick." Malone nodded, pocketing the bribe, and by afternoon, his officers were combing records for Marcus Tate, though his military file was a black hole of redactions. Kiana, meanwhile, refused to sit still. Her blog had grown to 2,000 views, a digital wildfire Nathan couldn't douse, and she poured her expulsion into a new post. "They kicked me out for a lie. Drugs I never touched. This is Pineview's justice." She hit publish, her fingers trembling, and watched the comments explode. "Same happened to me," one read. "They protect the rich kid," said another. By midday, a local activist group, Savannah Justice, caught wind of it, their leader, a wiry woman named Tanya, organizing a protest outside Pineview's gates. Kiana slipped out to join them, her hoodie pulled low, blending into a crowd of 20, chanting, "No more silence." Signs bobbed above their heads. "End the bias. Justice for Kiana." She felt a surge of power, her voice amplified through strangers' shouts, a fleeting taste of victory. Nathan wasn't about to let it stand. He watched from the school steps, his crew at his side, their faces darkening as the protest grew louder. "They think they can touch me," he muttered, cracking his knuckles. "Big mistake." He nodded to Jace, who slipped away, returning minutes later with a duffel bag from his truck. Inside were firecrackers and a slingshot, crude but effective. As the activists chanted, Jace aimed from a second-floor window, launching the firecrackers into the crowd. They popped like gunshots, sparks flying, and panic erupted. Tanya stumbled, clutching her arm where a spark burned her skin, while Kiana ducked, her heart racing. Nathan's crew didn't stop there. Tyler filmed it all, editing the chaos in real time, splicing in clips of Kiana from the cafeteria attack to make her look like the ringleader. Within an hour, the video hit Pineview's social media. "Scholarship thug starts riot." Comments poured in, vicious and swift. "She's a criminal. Expel her for good." Jamal Carter, Kiana's quiet ally, was in the crowd, his hoodie singed from a stray spark. He tackled Jace as the linebacker reloaded, fists flying in a blur of rage, but Miles and Tyler pulled him off, pinning him to the pavement. Blood trickled from Jamal's lip as campus security hauled him away, Nathan smirking from the sidelines. The police arrived, Chief Malone's men, their badges glinting under the Georgia sun. They ignored Nathan's crew, zeroing in on the activists. "Disperse or you're all under arrest," Officer Daniels shouted, his hand on his baton. Tanya argued, her voice sharp. "We're peaceful. They attacked us." Daniels smirked, nodding to Jamal, cuffed and slumped against a squad car. "Tell that to him." Kiana stepped forward, her phone out, recording the selective enforcement, but Daniels snatched it, tossing it into the dirt. "You're the problem here, Jackson," he growled, grabbing her arm. "You're coming with us." They dragged her to the station, the same cold room where they'd processed the drug charge, her wrists aching anew as they locked her in, a holding cell. Elise arrived an hour later, her diner shift cut short, face etched with terror. "What's the charge?" she demanded, pounding the desk. The sergeant shrugged. "Inciting a riot. She's lucky it's juvie this time." Kiana sat on the cell's metal bench, the concrete walls closing in, her blog's triumph drowned by Nathan's chaos. They held her overnight, the fluorescent lights buzzing, her mind replaying Jamal's bloodied face, the firecrackers' sharp cracks. Elise fought for her release, her voice hoarse by morning, but the sergeant only relented when a lawyer friend from the diner called in a favor. Kiana stumbled out at dawn, her hoodie torn, exhaustion warring with fury. Marcus waited outside, his truck idling, eyes scanning the lot like a predator. "They're escalating," he said as she climbed in, his voice a low rumble. "Hurting your friend, locking you up." "They're not stopping." Kiana nodded, her throat tight. "Jamal's hurt because of me." Marcus gripped the wheel, knuckles whitening. "Not your fault, theirs." Back at the apartment, Elise hugged her tight, tears soaking Kiana's shoulder. But Marcus paced, his mind already shifting gears. Nathan's crew had drawn blood and the protest's failure was a gut punch. Kiana's fight had sparked hope, only to see it crushed under police boots. "What do you think about Marcus's first move against Nathan? Comment number 1 if you think it'll scare him off, or like if you reckon Nathan's too arrogant to back down. Subscribe if you're ready for this war to heat up, because tomorrow's episode is pure fire. So how far will Nathan go now that Kiana's locked horns with his crew? Will his next strike be the one that breaks her, or has he just lit a fuse he can't put out? Kiana Jackson stumbled into their Savannah apartment at dawn, her hoodie torn from the overnight stint in juvie, the sting of Nathan Carver's latest victory burning in her chest. The protest had crumbled under firecrackers and police batons, Jamal's bloodied face a haunting image she couldn't shake. Elise hovered, her diner apron still on, hands trembling as she pressed a cold cloth to Kiana's bruised wrists. Marcus Tate, her father, stood by the door, his green beret shadow filling the room, his duffel bag open on the floor with a tactical knife gleaming inside. He'd crippled Nathan's Mustang, sent a warning, but the retaliation had been swift and brutal. "They're not playing anymore," he said, his voice a low growl, eyes flicking to the window where dawn painted the sky pink. "Neither are we." Kiana nodded, exhaustion warring with rage. Her blog had sparked a fight, but Nathan's crew had turned it into a war zone. Marcus moved first, slipping out to the police station under cover of morning mist. He loitered near the back entrance, a baseball cap pulled low, listening as officers swapped shifts. With a recorder hidden in his sleeve, he caught Chief Malone, muttering to Officer Daniels in the parking lot. "Carver's kid says she started it. No evidence, no problem. Keep her locked up next time." Marcus's jaw tightened as he pocketed the device, the proof he needed to free Kiana from the riot charge. By noon, he marched into the station, his presence a quiet storm, and slapped the recording on the desk. "That's your chief admitting a frame-up," he said, his calm more menacing than any shout. The sergeant, a wiry man with a patchy beard, paled, stammering as he listened. "This ain't official," he muttered. But Marcus leaned closer, his breath steady. "It will be if I take it higher." An hour later, Kiana's charge was dropped, the sergeant citing insufficient evidence with a scowl, and she walked out, her head high despite the ache in her bones. Back at the apartment, Marcus didn't rest. That night he slipped into Richard Carver's office tower, a glass monolith overlooking Savannah's riverfront. The security was lax, a single guard dozing at the lobby desk, no match for Marcus's. Silent steps. He scaled the fire escape, his boots soundless on the rusted rungs, and breached the 10th floor window with a glass cutter from his kit. Inside, Richard's office smelled of leather and bourbon, a shrine to his real estate empire. Marcus worked fast, planting tiny surveillance bugs under the desk, behind a framed photo of Nathan grinning at a Pineview football game. He rifled through files, his gloved hands flipping pages until he found gold. Bank statements showing monthly payments to Principal Hargrove, labeled consulting fees, and emails to Chief Malone promising discretion on school matters. Evidence of bribes, a web tying Richard to Pineview's corruption. He photographed every page with a burner phone, then vanished, the guard snoring undisturbed below. Kiana spent the day rebuilding, her blog hitting 3,000 views, comments raging against Nathan's latest attack. She posted the protest video, her phone's shaky footage of firecrackers and Jamal's beating captioned, "This is what they protect." Her expulsion still stung, but Marcus's return gave her steel. She didn't know he was out there, dismantling Nathan's world one move at a time. At Pineview, Nathan strutted the halls, his crew tighter than ever, their arrogance unshaken. "She's out," he smirked, tossing a football to Jace in the cafeteria. "Her little protest's dead." Tyler grinned, scrolling his phone. Juvie didn't shut her up, though, blog still buzzing. Nathan's eyes narrowed, his perfect teeth flashing. Then we hit harder. That night, as Kiana slept fitfully on the couch, her dreams a blur of cuffs and sparks, Nathan's crew struck. At 2 in the morning, they crept into the apartment. Complex's lot, hoodies up, a Molotov cocktail glowing in Jace's meaty hand. Nathan lit the fuse, his laugh a low hiss, and hurled it through the Jacksons' ground floor window. Glass shattered, flames roaring to life, licking the curtains as smoke billowed thick and black. Kiana jolted awake, coughing, the heat searing. Her skin. Elise screamed from the bedroom, trapped by a wall of fire cutting off the hall. Marcus, dozing in a chair by the door, snapped to action, his training kicking in. He grabbed Kiana, shoving her toward the back exit, then doubled back for Elise, kicking through a blazing doorframe. Wood splintered, flames singeing his beard as he dragged her out, her nightgown smoking. Kiana Jackson slumped against the peeling wall of their Savannah apartment, the expulsion email from Pineview Academy glowing on her cracked phone like a death sentence. Her mother, Elise, paced the tiny kitchen, her diner apron stained with grease, voice trembling as she muttered about lawyers they couldn't afford. Marcus Tate, Kiana's father, stood by the window, his silhouette a dark pillar against the morning light, filtering through chipped blinds. He'd been back in her life for 3 days, a Green Beret sniper summoned from the shadows, his weathered face unreadable as he watched the street below. The drug-planting Nathan Carver's frame-up and Principal Hargrove's smug expulsion had crushed Kiana's dreams of MIT, but Marcus's presence was a spark in the ashes. "They think they've buried you," he said, his voice low and steady, turning to face her. "They don't know what's coming." Kiana nodded, her bruised wrist still aching from the cuffs, her resolve hardening. She'd lost Pineview, but she wouldn't lose the fight. That night, Marcus slipped out, his duffel bag slung over one shoulder, moving through Savannah's back streets like a phantom. He'd spent years off the grid, his sniper skills honed in missions too classified to name, and now he turned them on Nathan Carver. At 2 in the morning, he crouched in the shadows of Pineview's student parking lot, Nathan's sleek Mustang gleaming under a street lamp. With a flick of his wrist, he attached a small device beneath the car's chassis, a remote jammer he'd rigged from parts scavenged in his motel room. A text to Nathan's phone followed, sent through an encrypted burner. "Back off, or you'll..." "Wish you had." He melted into the night, leaving no trace. By dawn, Nathan strutted into the lot, his crew trailing him, their laughter echoing off the brick walls. He climbed into the Mustang, key turning, but the engine sputtered and died. His smirk vanished as he tried again, the car silent. the jammer frying its electronics. Jace pounded the hood. Tyler scrolled his phone for a fix and Miles kicked a tire, their frustration mounting. Nathan found the note tucked under the wiper, his blue eyes narrowing as he read it aloud. "Some losers messing with me," he snarled, crumpling the paper. "They're dead." He didn't know it was Marcus, but the seed of doubt took root. Across town, Richard Carver, Nathan's father, got the call in his sprawling office, a glass tower overlooking Savannah's skyline. Real estate kingpin and Pineview benefactor, he ruled with money and fear, his tailored suit a shield against accountability. "Fix it," he barked to his assistant, slamming the phone down, "and find out who's screwing with my son." He dialed a private security firm, ex-cops with loose morals, and by noon 2 burly men in black SUVs patrolled Pineview's grounds, their eyes scanning for threats. Richard wasn't done. He leaned on Police Chief Malone, a grizzled man who'd owed him favors since a shady land deal a decade back. "There's a nutcase targeting my kid," Richard said over coffee at a downtown diner, sliding an envelope of cash across the table. "Dig up dirt. Make it stick." Malone nodded, pocketing the bribe, and by afternoon his officers were combing records for Marcus Tate, though his military file was a black hole of redactions. Kiana, meanwhile, refused to sit still. Her blog had grown to 2,000 views, a digital wildfire Nathan couldn't douse, and she poured her expulsion into a new post. "They kicked me out for a lie. Drugs I never touched. This is Pineview's justice." She hit publish, her fingers trembling, and watched the comments explode. "Same happened to me," one read. "They protect the rich kids," said another. By midday, a local activist group, Savannah Justice, caught wind of it. Their leader, a wiry woman named Tanya, organizing a protest outside Pineview's gates. Kiana slipped out to join them, her hoodie pulled low, blending into a crowd of 20, chanting, "Oh, no more silence." Signs bobbed above their heads. "End the bias. Justice for Kiana." She felt a surge of power, her voice amplified through strangers' shouts, a fleeting taste of victory. Nathan wasn't about to let it stand. He watched from the school steps, his crew at his side, their faces darkening as the protest grew louder. "They think they can touch me," he muttered, cracking his knuckles. "Big mistake." He nodded to Jace, who slipped away, returning minutes later with a duffel bag from his truck. Inside were firecrackers and a slingshot, crude but effective. As the activists chanted, Jace aimed from a second-floor window, launching the firecrackers into the crowd. They popped like gunshots, sparks flying, and panic erupted. Tanya stumbled, clutching her arm, where a spark burned her skin, while Kiana ducked, her heart racing. Nathan's crew didn't stop there. Kiana Jackson sat on the edge of a creaky motel bed, the stale smell of cigarette smoke clinging to the walls, her cracked phone clutched in her hands. The fire that gutted their Savannah apartment still flickered in her mind. Nathan Carver's Molotov cocktail reducing her life to ashes. Elise, her mother, lay beside her, breathing shallowly under a thin blanket, her diner apron discarded on the floor after a sleepless night. Marcus Tate, her father, stood by the window, peering through the blinds at the cracked parking lot, his Green Beret instincts on high alert. He'd pulled them from the blaze, but their home was gone, their savings torched, and Kiana's blog, now at 4,000 views, felt like a hollow victory. "We can't stay here long," Marcus said, his voice a low rumble, turning to face them. "They'll come looking." Kiana nodded, her throat tight, the weight of their homelessness pressing down like a stone. By noon, Elise rallied, her resolve flickering back. "I know a place," she said, pulling on a worn jacket. "Pastor Evans runs a community center downtown. He'll take us in." They packed their few salvaged belongings into Marcus's truck, the ride silent except for the engine's growl, Savannah's humid air thick with tension. The center was a squat brick building on the edge of the historic district, its sign faded but welcoming. Hope House. Pastor Evans, a broad-shouldered man with graying temples, met them at the door, his eyes softening as Elise explained their plight. "They're your family here," he said, ushering them inside. The main room buzzed with volunteers sorting donations, a makeshift sanctuary of folding chairs and donated blankets. Kiana felt a flicker of relief, a temporary shield against Nathan's wrath, Pastor Evans gave them a corner with cots and a curtain for privacy, his voice firm. "No one's running you out again." Marcus stayed on the fringes, his duffel bag close, watching every face that passed. He'd planted bugs in Richard Carver's office, and that night he listened through an earpiece as Richard raged to his assistant. "That fire should have ended it. Find them." Marcus smirked, pocketing the device, and slipped out to meet a contact, a grizzled journalist named Sam Porter from the Savannah Tribune. They met in a diner parking lot, the neon sign buzzing overhead, and Marcus handed over a flash drive with Richard's bribe records. "School board payoffs, police hush money," Marcus said, his tone flat. "Publish it." Sam nodded, his weathered face lighting up. "This'll blow the lid off Pineview." By morning, the Tribune ran the story online. Real estate mogul bribes school officials, with screenshots of bank transfers and emails tying Richard to Hargrove and Chief Malone. The blogosphere erupted. Kiana's posts linked as evidence, her views spiking to 6,000. Protests swelled outside Pineview again, bigger this time, 50 strong, chanting, "Justice now!" Kiana watched from the center's window, her chest swelling with fragile hope. Had they finally struck a blow Nathan couldn't dodge? At the center, she helped Pastor Evans stack canned goods, her hands steadying as volunteers praised her courage. "Oh, your blog woke us up," one said, a young woman with braids. Kiana smiled, the first real one in days, thinking maybe they'd turn the tide. Marcus stayed low, scouting the streets, his burner phone buzzing with updates from Sam. "Carver's scrambling," Sam texted. "Cops are rattled." Kiana dared to believe they'd won a round, her expulsion and the fire fading under this new light. But Nathan's crew didn't flinch, and Richard's desperation fueled a counterattack that shattered their haven. Pineview, Nathan gathered his crew in the gym, his golden hair mussed, eyes wild. "That story's nothing," he sneered, slamming a locker. "My dad'll bury it. She's hiding somewhere. We finish her." Tyler, the tech whiz, grinned, tapping his phone. "Found her. Hope House. Power grids online. Easy to cut." Jace flexed his fists, eager, while Miles nodded, clutching a crowbar. That night at 11, the center's lights flickered and died, a blackout plunging the room into darkness. Kiana froze mid-conversation with a volunteer, her pulse spiking as shouts erupted. Pastor Evans grabbed a flashlight, yelling, "Stay calm." But the chaos was Nathan's opening. Through the back door, his crew slipped in, hoodies up, faces shadowed. Jace smashed a window for distraction, glass raining down, while Tyler cut the backup generator's wires with a pocket knife. Nathan led the charge, spotting Kiana's cot through the gloom. He grabbed her arm, yanking her into the hall, his breath hot against her ear. "You're done, trash," he hissed, dragging her toward the exit. Miles and Jace flanked him, shoving. Volunteers aside, their laughter a cruel echo. Kiana fought, kicking and clawing, but Nathan's grip tightened, bruising her skin. They hauled her to an abandoned warehouse 2 blocks away, a rotting shell of concrete and rust, its windows boarded. Inside, they tied her wrists with zip ties, the plastic biting deep, and Nathan paced, his phone filming her struggle. "Your dad thinks he's smart," he taunted, zooming in. "Let's see him find you now." Tyler set up a makeshift barricade, crates stacked high while Jace stood guard, crowbar swinging. Miles smirked, tossing a water bottle at her feet. "Scream all you want. No one's coming." Kiana glared, her voice steady despite the fear. "You're wrong." Outside, Marcus had returned to the center, his earpiece silent. Richard's office quiet for once. He found the blackout, the broken window, and Elise's frantic shout, "They took her!" His training snapped into gear, eyes scanning the dark for clues. A scuff mark on the pavement, a dropped zip tie wrapper led him to the warehouse. He circled it silently, peering through a crack, spotting Kiana bound, Nathan's crew gloating. His blood ran cold, the firebomb's heat flashing back, but he stayed calm, a predator in the shadows. Back at the center, the Tribune story hit. Print, protests doubling to 100, Savannah's streets alive with outrage. Richard called an emergency meeting in his tower, his voice crackling through Marcus's bugs. "Shut it down. Hire muscle if you have to." He didn't know his son had already upped the ante, turning Kiana's fight into a hostage game. She sat in the warehouse, her wrists raw, the air thick with dust and menace, thinking of Marcus's promise. They're not stopping. Neither would she. Nathan's phone buzzed, his dad's text flashing, "Finish it quiet." He grinned, raising the crowbar, but Kiana's eyes burned with defiance, a spark he couldn't snuff. "All right, if you think Marcus's evidence will topple Richard's empire, comment number 1 below. Hit like if you're furious the cops ignored that firebomb. Subscribe if you're hooked on this fight, because tomorrow's episode is a game changer. So what's Nathan's next move with Kiana trapped? Will he break her spirit, or has he just handed Marcus the perfect target to unleash hell? Kiana Jackson sat bound in the abandoned Savannah warehouse, her wrists raw from zip ties, the air thick with dust and the sour stink of rust. Nathan Carver paced before her, his golden hair glinting in the dim light of a flickering lantern, his phone filming her defiance as his crew loomed nearby. Jace gripped a crowbar, his linebacker bulk a wall of menace, while Tyler adjusted the barricade of crates, his tech-savvy hands twitchy with nerves. Miles leaned against a pillar, smirking, tossing pebbles at her feet to watch her flinch. "Your dad's a ghost, huh?" Nathan taunted, zooming in on her bruised face. "He's too late." Kiana glared back, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. "You don't know him." Outside, Marcus Tate moved through the night, a shadow honed by years as a Green Beret sniper. He'd tracked the scuff marks from Hope House, his daughter's kidnapping igniting a cold fury he hadn't felt since the battlefield. At the warehouse's edge, he crouched behind a rusted dumpster, peering through a boarded window's gap. He saw Kiana, bound and defiant, Nathan's crew circling like jackals. His duffel bag rested beside him, a silenced pistol and lockpicks within reach, but he opted for precision over firepower. He slipped around back, finding a loose panel, and eased it open, his boots silent on the concrete floor. The warehouse was a maze of shadows, crates stacked high, perfect for his approach. He moved like smoke, closing the gap, his breath controlled, every step calculated. Nathan didn't hear him until it was too late. Marcus struck from behind, a swift chop to Tyler's neck, dropping him soundless, his phone clattering. Jace spun, crowbar raised, but Marcus sidestepped, twisting the weapon free with a flick of his wrist, then slammed Jace's head into a crate, knocking him cold. Miles lunged, fists wild, but Marcus caught his arm, flipping him onto his back. With a thud that echoed, Nathan froze, the crowbar slipping from his hand as Marcus loomed over him, his eyes a storm of contained lethality. "Move, and you're next," Marcus said, voice low and final. He cut Kiana's ties with a blade from his sleeve, her wrists bleeding but free, and she stumbled to her feet, adrenaline surging. Nathan bolted for the exit, shoving crates aside, his bravado shattered as he vanished into the night, vowing, under his breath, "This isn't over." Marcus didn't chase, his focus on Kiana. "You good?" he asked, scanning her for injuries. She nodded, rubbing her wrists, her voice hoarse. "Yeah, thanks." They slipped out, the unconscious crew left sprawled, and returned to Hope House under a moonless sky. Elise rushed to Kiana, her arms tight around her daughter, tears soaking her shirt, while Pastor Evans watched, his face grim. Marcus stood apart, cleaning his blade, the rescue a fleeting victory in a war growing darker. By morning, the Savannah Tribune story hit print. Sam Porter's expose on Richard Carver's bribe splashed across front pages, linking bank records to Pineview's corruption. Protests swelled to 150 outside the school, chants of justice for Kiana shaking the gates. Richard's office phone buzzed with panicked calls, and at noon, the school board suspended him pending investigation, a crack in his empire. Kiana saw the news on her phone, her blog views spiking to 8,000, a surge of hope washing over her. "We're winning," she whispered to Elise, a rare smile breaking through. Marcus nodded, his earpiece crackling with Richard's latest rant, "They've got nothing, fix this." Kiana dared to believe the tide had turned, her kidnapping a nightmare they'd survived. Nathan's crew humbled. But Richard Carver wasn't a man to bow out. That afternoon, he met a rogue ex-cop named Vickers in a backroom bar, a hulking, figure with a scar across his cheek and a rap sheet scrubbed by favors. "I need them gone," Richard said, sliding a wad of cash across the table. "Permanent, no traces." Vickers grinned, pocketing the money. "Consider it done." He'd done wet work for Richard before, silencing whistleblowers, and this was just another job. By dusk, Vickers scouted the motel where the Jacksons had retreated after Hope House, its neon sign buzzing faintly. Marcus had moved them there, sensing the center's exposure, his truck parked out front. Vickers planted a brick of C4 under the gas line, wiring it to a remote detonator, his movements swift and practiced. He retreated to a hill a block away, finger on the trigger, waiting for nightfall. Inside, Kiana sat on a bed, her blog open. On her laptop typing a new post, "They took me, but I'm still here, we're stronger than their hate." Elise brewed coffee in a cracked pot, her hands steadier now, while Marcus cleaned his pistol, his instincts prickling. At 9, he paused, head tilting, a faint hum catching his ear. He crossed to the window, peering out, and spotted a glint on the hill, a reflection off Vickers's scope. "Get down!" he roared, shoving Kiana and Elise to the floor as the world erupted. The explosion ripped through the motel's east wall, a fireball swallowing the room, glass and wood splintering in a deafening blast. Marcus had yanked them, behind the bed, his body shielding theirs, the heat searing his back as debris rained. Smoke choked the air, sirens wailing in the distance, but he dragged them out through a shattered side door, coughing, Elise's arm bleeding from shrapnel. Kiana stumbled, her ears ringing, the laptop a twisted wreck in the rubble. They collapsed in the parking lot, flames licking the sky, the motel a gutted shell. Neighbors gaped, phones filming, but Vickers was gone, his SUV peeling out unseen. Police arrived, Chief Malone himself this time, his face a mask of false concern. "Gas leak, looks like," he said, kicking a charred plank. "Tragic accident." Kiana's voice cut through, raw and furious. "It was a bomb. You're covering for them." Malone's eyes narrowed, but he turned away, muttering to Daniels about no evidence. Elise clutched her bleeding arm, her voice breaking. "They're trying to kill us." Marcus stood, his beard singed, eyes locked on the wreckage. They failed. At Pineview, Nathan heard of the blast, his smirk returning as he texted Tyler. "She's toast now." His crew regrouped, battered but unbowed, believing Kiana's fight was ashes like the motel. Richard watched the news in his tower, a glass of bourbon in hand, Vickers's call confirming the job. Close enough. He thought the Jacksons were dead, his suspension a minor hiccup he'd bribe his way out of. Kiana sat in the ambulance, a blanket over her shoulders, Elise bandaged beside her, the blog's loss a gut punch. Marcus scanned the crowd, his mind shifting gears. The rescue had saved her, the story had hurt Richard, but the explosion was a new level of savagery, a line crossed into murder. "They're desperate," he said, his voice a blade. "That's their mistake." Kiana nodded, her defiance flickering back through the shock, knowing Nathan's crew wouldn't stop, and neither would she. Kiana Jackson sat in the back of an ambulance, a scratchy blanket draped over her shoulders, the acrid stench of smoke still clinging to her clothes. The motel explosion's heat lingered on her skin, the fireball that nearly claimed her life, now a smoldering ruin across the Savannah parking lot. Elise, her mother, winced beside her, a paramedic wrapping her shrapnel-torn arm, her face pale but fierce. Marcus Tate, her father, stood outside, his singed beard and steady gaze a stark contrast to the chaos, his Green Beret instinct scanning the crowd for threats. The warehouse rescue had freed Kiana. The Tribune's exposé had shaken Richard, Carver's empire, but Vickers's bomb had turned their fight into a death match. "They're not stopping," Marcus said, his voice a low growl, stepping closer. "We go underground." Kiana nodded, her throat raw, the loss of her blog's laptop a gut punch, but her resolve steel hard. By dawn, they vanished from the motel wreckage, slipping into a safe house Marcus had scouted, a rundown shack on Savannah's outskirts, hidden by overgrown pines. Elise settled on a moth-eaten couch, her arm in a sling while Kiana unpacked their salvaged clothes, her cracked phone their only lifeline. Marcus pulled burner phones from his duffel, handing one to each. "No traces," he said, his eyes flicking to the window. "We hit back smarter." Kiana dialed Sam Porter, the Tribune journalist, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "We're alive. Keep pushing the story." Sam's gruff reply crackled through. "On it." Carver's spinning lies already. That morning, Richard Carver stood in his glass tower, a bourbon in hand. His tailored suit rumpled as he watched TV news crews swarm Pineview. The school board suspension stung, but he wasn't out. He called a press conference at noon, his golden hair slicked back, voice smooth as he faced cameras on the tower steps. "This is a witch hunt," he declared, eyes glinting with practiced sincerity. "A deranged veteran, Marcus Tate, is targeting my family with fabricated evidence. My son's a victim here." He flashed a photo of Nathan, bruised from the warehouse fight, painting him as a sainted scholar. The media ate it up, headlines shifting. "Military madman threatens teen." Protests faltered, Savannah's outrage split by doubt, Kiana's blog buried under Richard's narrative. At the safe house, Kiana watched the broadcast on her phone, her stomach twisting as public opinion turned. "They're winning," she whispered, fists clenching. Marcus shook his head, his earpiece alive with Richard's office bugs. "They're scared, that's why they're loud." He'd heard Vickers's call confirming the botched hit, Richard's order to clean it up, and now he planned his next move. Elise, though, needed care, her arm swelling under the bandage. Against Marcus's caution, Kiana insisted on a hospital run. "She's hurting, Dad. We can't wait." They slipped into Savannah General at dusk, Marcus in a hoodie, Kiana guiding Elise to the ER, their burner phones off to dodge trackers. The waiting room hummed with fluorescent light, antiseptic stinging their noses, and a nurse whisked Elise to obey, leaving Kiana and Marcus in the hall. Nathan Carver, meanwhile, hadn't stopped. Released from Pineview's scrutiny after the warehouse beating, he'd grown unhinged, his perfect teeth bared in a constant snarl. He'd tracked Kiana's blog mentions, piecing together her hospital move from a stray comment, "Hope she's okay after the blast." At 9, he slipped into Savannah General, his hoodie low, a syringe of stolen insulin from his dad's stash tucked in his pocket. He bribed a janitor with $50 for Elise's bay number, his mind a fog of vengeance. "She's done," he muttered, weaving through the bustle, his pulse racing. Kiana stood by the vending machine, grabbing a coffee when she spotted him. His lanky frame, that golden hair peeking from the hood, sent her heart into overdrive. She texted Marcus. 3 bays down, Nathan's here." Marcus moved fast, his boots silent on the tile, intercepting Nathan as he slipped into Elise's bay. The curtain rustled, Nathan's hand on the IV line, the syringe glinting as he prepped to inject. Marcus grabbed his wrist, twisting hard, the syringe clattering to the floor as Nathan yelped, his voice a choked snarl. "You're dead, old man." Marcus slammed him against the wall, a forearm pinning his throat, just enough pressure to silence him without killing. "Try that again," Marcus whispered, his eyes a storm, "and you won't walk away." Nurses rushed in, alarms blaring, and security hauled Nathan off, his face bloodied from the struggle but alive. He landed in a hospital bed 2 floors, up, cuffed to the rail, spitting curses as police took statements. Chief Malone arrived, his grizzled face sour, dismissing it as teen antics gone wrong. "No proof he meant harm," Malone said, ignoring the syringe, his report a farce. Kiana stood by Elise's bed, her mother sedated but safe, fury boiling as Malone walked off. "They're protecting him," she hissed to Marcus, her voice breaking. "Even now." Marcus nodded, his mind shifting gears. "They're buying time." Back at the safe house, Kiana pieced together their next step, her blog gone but her fight alive. Marcus synced his burner with Sam's, pushing the bribe evidence wider, but Richard struck back harder. At midnight, state police raided. The Tribune's office, tipped by Malone's cronies, their boots stomping through Sam's desk. They seized the flash drive, Richard's records, every scrap of proof, claiming national security concerns tied to Marcus's military past. Sam called Marcus, breathless. "They've got it all. Carver's got friends high up." By morning, the story stalled. Protests shrank to a dozen diehards, and Richard's press conference ran on loop, painting Marcus as a terrorist, Kiana a delinquent. Nathan, patched up and released, texted his crew from the hospital. "She's next." Kiana sat on the shack's floor, her phone dark, the hospital scare and evidence loss a double blow. Elise stirred, her voice weak. "We can't keep running." Marcus cleaned his pistol, his calm unshaken. "We're not running, we're hunting." The system had closed ranks, Nathan's poison attempt a near miss, and their proof was ashes. Kiana's fight teetered, her spirit battered but unbowed, knowing the next strike would be deadlier. "All right, if you think Marcus should have ended Nathan right there in the hospital, comment number 1 below. Hit like if you're raging at the cops for letting him walk again. Subscribe if you're gripped by this showdown, because tomorrow's episode is a total explosion. So, with their evidence gone and Nathan free, what's the next twist in this brutal game? Will Kiana crack under the pressure, or has Richard just pushed Marcus to a point of no return? Kiana Jackson crouched in the dim light of the safe house, a ramshackle hut buried in Savannah's pine thickets, her cracked phone clutched tight as Elise slept fitfully on the couch, her bandaged arm a stark reminder of the motel bombing. Marcus, Tate, her father, paced the creaky floor, his green beret precision a quiet storm, his burner phone glowing with the last message from Sam Porter. They took everything. The Tribune raid had gutted their evidence, Richard Carver's bribes. To Pineview and the police buried by state muscle, Nathan's hospital attack on Elise brushed off as a prank. Kiana's blog was a ghost, her voice silenced, and the city's protests dwindled to whispers under Richard's media spin branding Marcus a madman. "We're out of moves," Kiana said, her voice raw, eyes burning with unshed tears. Marcus stopped, his weathered face unyielding. "No. We go bigger." He pulled a second burner from his duffel, dialing a number he hadn't touched in years. A military contact from his sniper days, Colonel Reese, now at the Pentagon. "Need a favor," Marcus said, voice clipped. "Financial records, Carver." "Enterprises, federal level, can you get it?" Reese's gravelly reply came fast. "Risky but doable, give me 12 hours. Kiana watched, her pulse quickening, a flicker of hope piercing the despair. Marcus wasn't just fighting, he was rewriting the battlefield. By dawn, Reese delivered, emailing encrypted files to Marcus's burner, tax evasion logs, offshore, accounts, payments to state officials, a ledger of Richard's corruption stretching beyond Pineview. Marcus synced it to a thumb drive, his plan forming. "Feds don't bow to local cash," he said, handing Kiana the drive. "We take this straight to them." She nodded, her jaw tightening. "But we need more eyes on this." She had an idea, one born from her blog's ashes. At noon, she slipped into Savannah's public library, her hoodie low, using a battered computer to contact every Pineview victim she'd connected with online. "Walk out," she typed, her fingers flying. "Tomorrow noon outside the school, bring everyone. We make them see." Responses flooded in, dozens strong. "I'm in. They ran me out too, time to fight." Kiana's chest swelled, her expulsion a wound, but her voice still a weapon. By morning, Savannah buzzed with whispers, former students rallying, their numbers swelling to 100 as they gathered outside Pineview's gates. Kiana stood among them, her face hidden by a scarf, Marcus nearby in a cap, watching the crowd chant, "No more lies." News vans rolled up, cameras flashing, the walkout a wildfire Richard couldn't douse. Kiana's heart raced, the tide shifting, her fight reborn in their shouts. At the safe house, Marcus prepped his final gambit, driving to an FBI field office, 50 miles north, the thumb drive in his pocket, his truck weaving through back roads to dodge Malone's patrols. He met Agent Lopez, a sharp-eyed woman with a no-nonsense stare, handing her the drive. "Carver's dirty," he said, voice flat. "Tax fraud, bribery, attempted murder. Check the dates." Lopez scanned the files, her brow furrowing as she traced payments to the governor's campaign. "This is big," she muttered, radioing her team. "We're moving on it." By dusk, federal warrants buzzed, agents raiding Richard's tower, his glass empire trembling. Kiana watched the news. On her phone, a grainy feed of suits hauling boxes, Richard's face pale as he ducked cameras. "We did it," she breathed, a rare grin breaking through. Elise squeezed her hand, her arm still in a sling, pride in her eyes. "You're unstoppable, baby." Marcus returned, his calm unshaken, but his earpiece crackled with Richard's. "Panic. They've got me, end it now." Kiana thought they'd won, the walkout a triumph, the feds a hammer, Nathan's crew silenced. But Richard Carver didn't bend. He broke rules. That night he met Vickers again, the rogue ex-cop in a derelict barn off Highway 17, cash changing hands under a flickering bulb. "Ambush," Richard hissed, his suit wrinkled, desperation in his voice. "Tate's meeting the feds tomorrow. Take him out. The girl too." Vickers nodded, his scar twitching, assembling a team of 3 mercenaries, ex-Marines with cold eyes and silenced rifles. "Double the pay," he said, pocketing the stack. "They're dead by dawn." Marcus had set the meet at a rest stop 20 miles east. A quiet handover of witness details to Lopez, Kiana and Elise along to testify. At 4 in the morning, they drove, the truck's headlights cutting through fog, Kiana in the back, her scarf tight, Elise beside her, Marcus at the wheel. He'd sensed the tail 5 miles out, a black SUV hugging the shadows but kept it quiet, his grip tightening. "Stay low," he muttered, eyes flicking to the mirror. The rest stop loomed, a deserted lot with a flickering vending machine, Lopez's sedan waiting. Marcus parked, stepping out to signal when the ambush hit. Vickers's team erupted from the trees, rifles barking, silenced shots punching the truck's hood. Marcus dove, rolling behind a concrete barrier, pulling his pistol as glass shattered. Kiana screamed, shoving Elise down, bullets ripping through the seats, her arm grazed by a ricochet, blood soaking her sleeve. Marcus returned fire, his aim surgical, dropping one merc with a headshot, the body crumpling in the dirt. Vickers flanked, his rifle spitting, but Marcus anticipated, lunging to snap his wrist, the weapon clattering. The second merc charged, a blade flashing, slicing Marcus's forearm before a knee to the gut sent him sprawling. Kiana crawled from the wreck, dragging Elise, her arm throbbing, panic clawing her throat. Lopez fired from her sedan, clipping the third merc's shoulder. But Vickers rallied, his team regrouping. Marcus fought like a machine, disarming the second merc with a twist, snapping his neck with a crack. But Vickers landed a boot to his chest, sending him staggering. Kiana stumbled to Lopez, shoving Elise into the car, her voice hoarse. "Go." Lopez floored it, tires squealing, leaving Marcus pinned. He dodged Vickers's next shot, rolling to his truck, firing back, clipping Vickers's leg. The ex-cop roared, retreating with his last man, the fog swallowing them. Marcus slumped against the barrier, blood seeping from his arm, breathing. Hard as Lopez circled back, her sedan screeching to a halt, Kiana leapt out, her arm dripping, rushing to him. "You okay?" she gasped, tears streaking her face. He nodded, wincing. "Yeah, you." She clutched her greys, nodding, but her eyes locked on Elise, pale and trembling in the car. The feds swarmed, medics patching them up, Lopez barking orders. "Carver's done." By sunrise, Richard's arrest hit the wires, his tower sealed, but Kiana's wound was a fresh scar, her blood on the asphalt a testament to Nathan's reach. Marcus stood, his pistol holstered, fury simmering. "They're cornered now," he said, voice ablade, and desperate. Kiana nodded, her fight battered but alive, knowing the war wasn't over. "All right, if you think Marcus's military moves saved the day, comment #1 below. Hit like if you're stunned Nathan's crew keeps dodging justice. Subscribe if you're hooked on this chaos, because tomorrow's episode will flip everything. So, with Richard nabbed and Kiana bleeding, what's the next blow in this? Savage fight? Will Nathan strike back alone, or has Marcus just lit the fuse for a bigger explosion? Kiana Jackson lay in a Savannah hospital bed, her arm bandaged from the bullet graze sustained in the rest stop ambush, the sterile smell of antiseptic sharp in her nose. Elise sat beside her, her own arm still in a sling from the motel bombing, her eyes red from crying as monitors beeped softly. Marcus Tate, her father, stood by the window, his forearm wrapped in gauze from the mercenary's blade, his green beret silhouette rigid against the dawn light. The feds had arrested Richard Carver hours ago. His glass tower sealed after the thumb drive's evidence of tax fraud and bribery hit their desks, a victory carved in blood. Kiana's walkout had rallied 100 voices, but Vickers's attack had nearly ended them, her wound a throbbing reminder of Nathan's unrelenting hate. "He's in custody," Marcus said, voice low, turning to face them. "But this isn't over." Kiana nodded, pain pulsing through her, her fight teetering on the edge. By noon she was in surgery, the greys cleaned and stitched, Elise pacing the hall while Marcus slipped out, his burner phone buzzing with Agent Lopez's update. Carver's singing, naming names. He drove back to the safe house, the pine-shrouded shack, and synced the thumb drives back up to a laptop, emailing it to Lopez with a note. "Finish it." The feds swarmed Savannah, warrants flying, Chief Malone's precinct raided, his badge stripped as bank records tied him to Richard's payroll. Kiana woke post-op, groggy but alive, Elise's hand squeezing hers. "We won," her mother whispered, a fragile smile breaking through. Kiana's chest loosened, the weight lifting for a moment, Richard's fall a balm to their scars. At Pineview, Nathan Carver heard the news, his golden hair disheveled, his perfect teeth gritted as he paced his mansion bedroom, free despite the hospital attempt on Elise. His crew was fractured, Jace and Tyler nursing wounds, Miles jittery, but Nathan's mind snapped, his father's arrest a match to his gasoline rage. "They think they've got us," he muttered, smashing a lamp, glass shattering across the hardwood. He grabbed his phone, texting an encrypted app he'd learned from Tyler. "Board meeting tonight. End them all." His plan was unhinged. A bomb cobbled from fertilizer and a gas can, stolen from his dad's garage, wired with a cheap timer from a hardware store run. He'd plant it at Pineview during the emergency school board session, a meeting called to oust Hargrove and install reformers, blaming Marcus for the blast. At 6 he slipped into the school, his hoodie low, the bomb in a backpack, his steps silent on the polished halls. The board convened in the auditorium, 100 parents and students packed in, voices rising as Hargrove's resignation was demanded. Nathan hid the device under the bleachers, the timer ticking down from 30 minutes. His smirk twisted as he slipped out, texting Marcus from a burner. "Check the school, hero." Marcus, back at the hospital, felt the buzz, his instincts flaring as he read the message. "Stay with her," he told Elise, sprinting to his truck, the engine roaring as he floored it to Pineview, 10 miles away. Kiana stirred, her voice weak. "What's wrong?" Elise hesitated, then showed her the text, fear tightening her grip. "He's going after them." Marcus hit the school lot at 6:20, tires screeching, the auditorium's lights glowing through the dusk. He scanned the building, his sniper's eye catching a faint red blink under the bleachers, the bomb's timer at 9 minutes. He bolted inside, shoving through the crowd, his voice a bark. "Get out! Now!" Parents froze, then scattered as he dove under the seats, the device crude but lethal, wires tangled around a gas can. Sweat beaded on his brow as he traced the circuit, his blade slicing the red wire with 3 minutes left, the timer freezing at 1:42. The room emptied, sirens wailing as police swarmed, Lopez leading the feds, her sedan screeching in behind. Marcus emerged, the bomb in hand, disarmed, his breath ragged as he handed it to her. "Carver's kid," he said, voice hard. "He's loose." The crowd cheered, news cameras flashing, Marcus a reluctant hero, his face plastered across feeds. "Veteran saves school." Kiana watched from her bed, Elise's phone streaming the chaos, a surge of pride mixing with dread. "He did it," she whispered, her arm aching. But Richard's reach stretched beyond bars. At 8, Governor Ellis, a silver-haired politico with Carver cash lining his campaign, issued a statement from Atlanta. "Nathan Carver's actions are a tragic misstep. I'm granting a full pardon, effective immediately." The news hit like a slap. Ellis's ties to Richard's offshore accounts, buried by the same feds now chasing him, a deal cut in shadows. Nathan walked free by midnight, his mansion quiet. His crew dispersed, but his eyes burned with a madman's gleam. He texted Kiana's cracked phone, a number he'd hacked from her blog. "You're next, bitch." Kiana read it, her heart sinking. The victory of Richard's fall and the school's salvation undone by Nathan's release. Elise clutched her hand, voice trembling. How do they keep winning? Marcus returned, his face a mask of fury, the governor's pardon a gut punch. They're desperate, he said, cleaning his blade, blood still flecking the edge from the ambush. Desperate's dangerous. At Pineview, the board reconvened the next day, Hargrove ousted, reformers installed, but Nathan's bomb plot cast a shadow, his pardon a stain on their triumph. Kiana lay in the hospital, her stitches itching, the walkout's echo fading under this new blow. Marcus stood watch, his pistol close, knowing Nathan's freedom was a loaded gun. He'll come for us, Kiana said, voice steady despite the fear. Marcus nodded, his eyes distant. Let him try. The breaking point had hit, their fight a roller coaster of hope and despair, Nathan's madness a wild card still in play. Kiana Jackson woke in the Savannah hospital, her arm throbbing under fresh stitches from the rest stop ambush, the sterile room a fragile cocoon against the storm outside. Elise sat beside her, her bandaged arm trembling as she scrolled news. On her phone, Governor Ellis's pardon of Nathan Carver looping on every channel. Marcus Tate, her father, leaned against the wall, his green beret frame tense, his pistol holstered but close after disarming Nathan's bomb at Pineview. Richard Carver's arrest had cracked their empire, the school board saved, but Nathan's freedom was a dagger poised to strike again. He's coming, Kiana said, voice steady, sitting up despite the pain. Marcus nodded, his weathered face a mask of resolve. I'm ending this. He slipped out, his burner phone buzzing with Agent Lopez's update. Nathan's off the grid. Watch your back. Kiana watched him go, her chest tight, knowing his sniper's calm hid a storm ready to break. By noon she was discharged, her arm in a sling. Elise guiding her to a new safe house, a rented trailer on Savannah's edge, its tin roof rattling in the wind. Marcus didn't stay, his truck peeling out, his mind on Nathan. I'm disappearing, he told Kiana, his voice low. To keep you safe, he'll follow me. She clutched his sleeve, eyes fierce. Don't leave us again. He hugged her, brief but hard, then drove off, his plan to vanish into the shadows like he had 10 years ago, drawing Nathan away. Kiana sat in the trailer, Elise brewing tea, the pardon sting a fresh wound. Richard's fall felt hollow, Nathan's text, "You're next, bitch," a promise of more blood. She stared at her cracked phone, her blog gone, her fight battered, but her spirit unbroken. I'm not running, she said, voice rising. I'll be a lawyer. I'll tear this system down. Elise smiled, tears brimming. You're your father's daughter. Across town, Nathan Carver paced his mansion, the silence deafening without his crew, his father's arrest a shackle snapped by madness. The bomb's failure, Marcus's heroics, the pardon, it twisted him into something. Feral. He smashed a mirror, glass splintering, his golden hair wild, eyes bloodshot. They took everything, he muttered, clutching a burner phone, his mind a tangle of rage and ruin. Richard sat in county lockup, his tailored suit swapped for orange, his calls monitored as he barked orders to lawyers. But Nathan didn't. Wait for legal games. He dug through his dad's safe, finding a file Richard had kept hidden, audio tapes of Pineview deals, murders of whistleblowers, a decade of blood money. Nathan froze, the recordings a revelation, his father's voice cold. Bury them deep, no traces. He'd been a pawn, not a prince, and the realization broke him. At dusk, he drove to an FBI Dropbox, his hoodie low, and dumped the tapes, a note scrawled in jagged ink. He made me. Finish him. He texted Kiana one last time from a new burner. This isn't over. Then vanished, his Mustang roaring into the night, a ghost slipping into witness protection under a deal cut with Lopez's team. The feds pounced, the tapes a bombshell. Richard's cell raided at midnight, his smug grin fading as agents played his own words back. Kill the contractor. Pin it on the wife. By morning the news broke. Carver faces life, son's betrayal seals fate. Richard's empire crumbled, his sentence stacked with murder charges, Nathan's turn a gut punch he never saw coming. Kiana watched the feed in the trailer, her jaw dropping, Elise gasping beside her. He did it to himself, Kiana whispered. The twist a bitter victory, Nathan's madness their salvation. Lopez called Marcus's burner, his truck idling in a Carolina back road, the news crackling through. Nathan flipped. Richard's done. You're clear. Marcus exhaled, his exile unneeded, but he didn't return yet. His sniper's caution holding him back. Keep her safe, he said, hanging up, his eyes on the horizon, pride warring with ghosts. Savannah reeled, Pineview's board reformed, Hargrove's cronies ousted, a new principal vowing change. Kiana enrolled at a public school, her expulsion erased, a scholarship to Emory Law secured, her arm healing as she typed her first college essay. Justice isn't given, it's taken. Elise found work at a clinic, her sling off, her spirit. Mending while Marcus watched from afar, his truck parked in shadows, a silent guardian. Nathan's final text lingered, a chill in Kiana's bones, his whereabouts a mystery witness protection cloaking him in silence. She stood in the trailer's doorway, the Georgia sun setting, her grandmother's locket from Elise's drawer now around her neck, a talisman of resilience. He's out there, she said, voice firm, but I'm ready. Marcus rolled into town a week later, his duffel lighter, his presence a quiet promise. They sat as a family, the trailer's tin walls a fortress, Kiana's law books stacked beside her. Proud of you, he said, his gravelly voice soft, the first time he'd said it aloud. She smiled, the fight's scars a map to her future, Nathan's betrayal a twisted gift that freed them. Savannah rebuilt, Pineview's halls quieter, the system cracked but not broken. Kiana's vow a beacon, to fight racism with law, not fists, her father's shadow, her strength. The journey of Kiana Jackson in School Bully Attacks a Black Girl, until she calls her father, most lethal Green Beret sniper ever, offers profound lessons about resilience, justice, and the fight against systemic racism. First, it shows that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the will to stand up despite it. Kiana faced relentless racial attacks, from slurs to bombs, yet her defiance grew stronger, proving that inner strength can outlast external hate. Second, the story reveals the power of community and unexpected allies. Her blog united victims, and Marcus's military precision turned the tide, highlighting that collective resistance and strategic action can challenge even the most entrenched privilege. Third, Nathan's betrayal of Richard underscores a bitter truth. Evil often consumes itself. His madness, born from entitlement, became the carver's undoing, a reminder that unchecked power breeds its own downfall. Finally, Kiana's shift to law school teaches that lasting change requires more than vengeance. It demands dismantling systems through knowledge and persistence. Racism didn't vanish with Richard's arrest or Nathan's exile. It lingered, a shadow she vowed to confront legally. This story urges us to recognize injustice, amplify the silenced, and fight smart, not just hard, against oppression. What do you take from Kiana's battle? Comment below if her grit inspires you. Hit like if you're fired up by her justice quest, subscribe for more tales of triumph, and share to spread her story. Thanks for joining this ride. Here's to courage and a future where fairness prevails.